The diner smelled of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon, the kind of comforting aroma that made people feel at home. But for 16-year-old Emma Carter, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. She sat quietly in the corner booth, her work-roughened hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the worn-out menu though she had already memorized it long ago. Emma wasn't like the other girls in her class. Her family lived on a farm just outside of town, where mornings began before sunrise, where her boots were always muddy, and where silence was more common than laughter. She rarely spoke at school, not because she had nothing to say, but because her words always seemed to vanish under the sneers of kids who thought she was too plain, too country, too different. This Saturday morning, her father had brought the family into town for breakfast at Miller's Diner, their little treat after a hard week of tending crops and livestock. Emma's father, Jack Carter, was broad-shouldered and calm, a man whose presence filled a room without ever raising his voice. He wore a simple flannel shirt, his hair streaked with gray, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that Emma never questioned. Her younger brother, Tommy, chattered excitedly about the chocolate chip pancakes he planned to order, and her mother gently hushed him with a smile. For a brief moment, Emma felt the warmth of normalcy. But then the laughter came. It started from a booth across the room where 3 boys from Emma's high school had gathered. They were the kind of boys who thrived on attention, loud, careless, and cruel. The leader, Derek, leaned back with a smirk as he spotted Emma. His friends followed his gaze, and soon their whispers turned into mocking voices that carried across the diner. "Well, look who it is, the farm girl," Derek sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you bring your pitchfork to breakfast, Emma? Or just the smell of the barn?" His buddies roared with laughter, their voices sharp and ugly. Emma froze, her stomach knotting. She could feel the eyes of the diner shifting toward her, some filled with pity, others pretending not to notice. Heat burned her cheeks, and she wished she could disappear into the cracked vinyl seat. Her father noticed the change in her posture. Jack's eyes, calm and steady, moved from Emma to the boys. He didn't say anything at first, just observed the way a hawk might watch from above. But the boys weren't done. Derek stood up, swaggering over with the confidence of someone who had never been truly challenged. He stopped at their table, leaning on it casually. "You know," Derek said, his voice dripping with arrogance, "maybe your family should stick to slopping pigs. This diner's for real people, not farm animals." Emma's little brother looked up in confusion, his young mind not fully grasping the cruelty, but her mother's face hardened with quiet fury. Emma wanted to shrink away, to hide from the humiliation, but before she could speak, her father finally set down his coffee cup with deliberate calm. Jack stood, his chair scraping softly against the tile floor. He wasn't towering or loud, but something about the way he moved made Derek falter for the first time. Jack looked the boy straight in the eyes, his voice steady low, but carrying across the entire diner. "Son," he said, "you've had your fun. Now it ends." Derek's friends laughed nervously, unsure if they should back him up or stay silent. Derek tried to keep his smirk, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Or what?" he challenged. "You gonna scare me with your farm stories?" Jack's gaze never wavered. "No," he said simply. "I don't need to scare you. But you ought to know something before you decide to run your mouth about families you don't understand. I spent 20 years as a Navy SEAL. I've seen men half your size who had 10 times your courage. I've stood face to face with enemies who thought they were untouchable. And I can tell you this, the loudest ones are usually the weakest." The diner went silent. Forks paused in midair, conversations cut off. Derek's smirk vanished completely, replaced by the unmistakable look of someone realizing he had picked the wrong fight. His friends shifted uncomfortably, their laughter gone. Jack didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats. He simply placed a firm hand on Derek's shoulder and leaned in slightly. Strength isn't about tearing others down, it's about lifting them up. You do well to remember that. Derek stepped back quickly, his bravado shattered. He muttered something under his breath and hurried back to his booth, his friends following like shadows. The entire diner seemed to exhale at once, a murmur of admiration rippling through the room. Emma sat stunned, her heart pounding. She had always known her father was strong, but she had never seen it displayed so clearly, so powerfully. Not in violence, but in calm authority that left no room for doubt. For the first time, She felt a swell of pride that chased away the shame the bullies had tried to plant. Her father sat back down, as if nothing had happened, and picked up his coffee again. "No," he said with a small smile, "who's ready for pancakes?" The moment passed, but its weight lingered. Emma noticed how people looked at her differently now, with respect instead of pity, and when she glanced across the diner, Derek couldn't meet her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel small or invisible. She felt strong, not because of her father's past, but because he had shown her that real strength wasn't in fists or threats. It was in dignity, in standing firm when others tried to push you down. In the days that followed, word spread through the small town. Emma noticed a change at school. The whispers died down, the laughter aimed elsewhere. Derek kept his distance, his pride wounded but his lesson clear. And Emma, though still quiet, carried herself with new confidence. She realized that her father's lesson wasn't just for Derek. It was for her too. She didn't need to shrink when others tried to mock her. She didn't need to feel less than anyone else. She came from resilience. She came from strength, and she would never forget that. The morning sunlight spilled through the diner's front windows, golden rays glinting off chrome napkin holders and catching the steam rising from cups of coffee. Emma sat frozen in her seat, her heart still racing from the scene that had just unfolded. She watched her father as if seeing him for the very first time. To everyone else, he was just Jack Carter, a farmer who sold eggs and milk at the local market. But today, the truth had slipped out. He was more than that. A man who had lived through battles she couldn't even imagine. A Navy SEAL who carried not just scars, but wisdom. For years, Emma had carried shame like a shadow. The other kids made her feel like being from a farm was something to hide, like hard work and dirty boots made her less than them. But as she looked at her father now, calm and unshaken, she began to understand there was nothing shameful about her roots. Her father's strength wasn't in showing off or making noise. It was in the quiet kind of power that didn't need to be proven. But the boys who had mocked her weren't finished. Not really. Derek and his friends sulked in their booth, whispering bitterly among themselves. Their pride was bruised, and Emma could feel the tension thick in the air. She kept her eyes down, praying they wouldn't try anything else.